Hello, everybody. Happy International Women's Day. And happy Shivratri to our Hindu colleagues celebrating today. There are literally thousands of you joining us today, and I couldn't be more pleased to see the turnout. We have colleagues, over 1,500 of you, joining us in person at watch parties around the world, including Bangalore, Gurugram, Kolkata, Johannesburg, Paris, Budapest, Madrid, Dubai, and lots of locations in the UK, including our wonderful contact centres. We are quite literally international, this International Women's Day. I'm Vicky, Chair of the BT Group Gender Equality Network, and I just wanted to share 3 highlights of the last year with you as to things that our Gender Equality Network's been doing here at BT Group. Firstly, we've been building out a network of gender equality champions across all of our local offices around the world, trying to make sure that we're in every corner of this business, from the front line right through to the boardroom, in every location that we have presence around the world, so that we can create safe environments, safe spaces for people to share their lived experiences, connect and create community. And I couldn't be prouder of what we've achieved there. Secondly, we've created a senior women's community at BT Group, with every director, managing director and executive female in this business coming together on a quarterly basis to share their worked and lived experiences, to connect in a safe environment and to also network for themselves. And finally, my third highlight of the year is building out an external engagement team within our network that's been proactively going out and connecting with organisations outside of our own to understand what they're doing in the gender equality space. What initiatives are they piloting? What policies are they tackling? How can we learn from all of that activity here at BT Group and feed that back into our teams? It's through that work of the external engagement team that we've built the brilliant relationships that we have with Women at Tech. Women at Tech are a volunteer network of networks, sharing best practice, mentoring opportunities, and putting on community events for its representative companies, which include Amazon, BT Group, Cisco, Colt, Google, Infosys, Meta, Salesforce, Samsung, and Uber. Many employees from those are here with us today around the world, so thank you for joining us. Today, we're recognising the United Nations International Women's Day theme. Invest in women, accelerate progress. Our panel is going to dive in to how we're investing in women already across the tech industry and some of the brilliant advances that we've made in that space. But we're also here to recognise that there's a lot more to do. I love celebrating International Women's Day. It's my favourite day of the year. But let's not forget, we're not where we need to be. For those of you joining in person at our watch parties around the world, please do make sure you make the opportunity to network after this session and connect with the people in your rooms. For the allies that are joining us today, both in person and online, thank you for showing up. Thank you for supporting, listening and learning. We really appreciate you. So let's kick off with a really short keynote from Harmeen Mehta, Chief Digital and Innovation Officer here at BT Group and the Executive Sponsor for the Gender Equality Network.
Hello everyone, and a very warm welcome to everybody on this, what's a momentous day, the International Women's Day. Well, every day should be a day for a woman, but we're going to celebrate this till the day it's not needed. I want to also welcome all our partners who are here, and thank you for taking the time, and thank you for being part of probably one of the most important dialogue around most companies, around most board tables, and around most organizations as well. So a bit of perspective. I was thinking about today and about this keynote, and my apologies, I'm not there in person. But as I was thinking about it, the first thought that came to my mind is why after so many years, we are still in a position where less than half, way less than half of our workforce in all our companies is women. Way less than half of the percentage of our young girls actually choose the fields like the most advanced fields of technology, etc. today. Why is that? And every day we do a lot of things that we talk about at boardrooms and companies, in management tables, that we are taking these steps to really make a change. Well, still, the change has not fully happened. The world is changing, but it's not changing fast enough, and something is standing in the way. And if nothing, this is the time, and today is the day, and this is a stimulus that we give to all our people, all our cells, and all our organizations to really come together and talk about how do we invest in women, to invest in the future and to build a better future. And how do we just get this done? So this is one of the topics we can take off the list and move on to actually being the most progressive companies that we can be, and create a world which is the best version of the world we can create in our lifetime. I don't know what exactly it'll take for us to get there, but what I do know is we still have a lot of work to do. We still have a lot of work to do to inspire the young women who are going to form the world and the leaders of tomorrow. We have a lot of work to do to change the thinking of a lot of men around the tables to be able to create that right balance. And we've got a lot of work to do to actually create the right space that works for a diverse environment, that works for all genders, that works for all kinds of people, that works for people who bring a lot of diversity of structure, of gender, of thought, as well as a diversity of creativity as well, because that's what we are in this world to really do and make a difference on. What I would love to see is, as you guys go about and have the various discussions and dialogues, is real candor around what is standing in our way. Why are we not there yet? What is preventing us from getting there? Why have we been talking about the same thing for years, and yet, if we are really honest, have little to show for on what we have achieved, because we still have a long way to go? What will make us accelerate? And what will make this world truly balanced and make all our organizations truly balanced and be a true representation of society and of the customers that we are here to serve every day? If you can even find one idea that unlocks that makes you personally go faster, to influence a colleague to help get there faster, that will be the biggest success of this year's International Women's Day. Good luck, and let's go change the world.
Thank you so much, Harmeen, for your energy, passion, and continued support. I know she's really, really disappointed she couldn't be here with us today. So hopefully you're all feeling suitably inspired and ready to hear from our amazing panellists. I just want to point out that Q&A, even in the room here in London, will be done online. There is a QR code that you can see on the screen here. And for those of you that are in our watch parties around the world and online, you will see that QR code throughout the panel event today. So please just scan that, pop your question in, and we'll get those questions answered later on in the session. I'm going to hand over to Mitali Gohel, Women at Tech co-founder, an incredible woman, and who's going to host this really powerful conversation for us. So thank you.
Thank you, Vicky. Hello, everyone. Well, happy International Women's Day. Thank you all for turning up on a Friday. I know it's a hard sell, but I know this panel will be worth it, so thank you. I'm so excited to be hosting this panel today on how we invest in women and accelerate progress. Obviously, this is a topic that, as Harmeen mentioned, we have a lot of work to do on. So I'm hoping today's panel will give us some of the answers and provide some inspiration to you all. As Vicky introduced, I am Mitali Gohel. I'm one of the co-founders of Women at Tech, and I currently work at Amazon by day, and I'm also a proud BT alumni. I started off on the graduate program many, many moons ago, and I loved it here, and it's great to see the offices. So, I'm delighted to welcome our panel, and I'd like to do some introductions on behalf of them. So firstly, to my immediate left, we've got Deepika, who is the Chief Data and AI Officer here at BT. Welcome. We've got Catherine, the MD of Corporate Affairs and Brand at OpenReach, and also the Executive Sponsor for OpenReach Gen. Welcome, Catherine. Next, we've got Julie, who is currently the Chief of Staff for Marketing and PLG at Outshift by Cisco, and also a committed board member of Women of Cisco UK and Ireland. Welcome. We've got the amazing Eileen, who is currently the head of AI partnerships at Google and is also the co-chair of Women at Google. We've started the applauding, we have to carry on now. We've got Inez, the director of Amazon Shipping EU and also chair of Women at Amazon UK. And last but not least, we've got Maria, the Director of Global DEI Recruiting, Enablement and Programs at Meta. Welcome, Maria. So, in typical tech industry fashion, I'm going to start with some metrics. In research conducted by Women at Tech and working across industry, when comparing gender representation across the tech industry, we see that female representation worldwide is at 35% across the tech industry. That's the best number I'm going to share, though. When you look at UK, it goes down to 29%. And when you look at women in leadership roles, it goes down to 27%. And when you look at women in technical roles, it goes down to 23%. So as you can tell by those sobering numbers, there is a lot more work to do. And now I'd like to open up my first question to everyone on the panel. How do the statistics mentioned make you feel? And what do you see in your area, in your company? Do these numbers resonate with you? Who'd like to go first?
I can go first. Yes. So it's great to be here. Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's disappointing, I think, some of the stats. However, I think from my perspective, I mean, I've been at Cisco for 16 years. It was worse when I first joined, so I think things are improving. And I'm trying to see it as an opportunity, you know, to make a difference and to kind of keep growing, and that's why I'm part of the communities that I'm involved in within Cisco. I think also I sit in engineering, so part of the engineering business, the technical side of the business, is still predominantly male, but within that we have kind of marketing teams that are predominantly female. So I do think it's changing, but it's slow.
Who'd like to go next?
I could add to that. It is incredibly disappointing. When I started my career about 20 years ago, I thought it would catch on. You know, there'd be more women in tech. When I did my master's back in US, I was the only woman in the entire master's program for embedded software, neural networks, and all of that stuff. So it is very hard to see that the stats are still almost the same. It's very hard for me to still look around and say, when is this going to happen? You know, when there is, yes, biologically, we are made certain way, we do have kids and we do take care of them, but that maternity breaks, people not coming back to work or choosing a certain career because you have to be carers and all of that still weighs quite heavily on me. So yeah, it is where it is, but again, to Julie's point, we are all looking to make it better. We're all looking to say that having women in our teams is the most important thing. And we need to bring that diversity in. So we actually serve our customers with diverse brains, diverse voices, and diverse understanding of the situation. But yes, we're putting a lot of effort, supporting our women in our organizations, bringing more women in tech as well. And I think recently, Vicky and Harmeen did a session within the company as well, where they brought a lot of young girls into the office to be able to see with representation of women working in the office to show representation and also show everything that we do in tech, in data and AI, in software, in different roles. And it is highly motivating to see representation. And it's also for me to see representation in the top places by our CEO and Harmeen as well. It's very important.
Agreed. Yes,
yeah, I mean, like in Google, we are seeing progress, but to Harmeen's point, it's not fast enough. Like from the last diversity report, we have about 36% of our workforce women, but only see 32% of them in senior leadership roles. So it's still not catching us fast enough. Although it's been great to see in the last. I've been with Google for over 12 years. It's great to see women sort of really rise up the ranks now. And what I'd really love, also just to learn from the different companies. What we've done is really just double down on initiatives that really drive the change For instance, we did this sponsorship pathway where we paired, women directors specifically with VPs, even male VPs, to really just sort of create that advocacy and really help them advance their growth, into more senior leadership positions. We had programs like Polaris, for instance, really targeted towards pre-executive women, almost at that cusp of sort of transitioning to senior leadership roles, to sort of really, here's how we need to think about expansively about your career, sort of here's how to advocate sponsorship, here's how to advocate, community around you to support you, really meant to sort of just, offer a targeted support to, to sort of grow them into leadership positions. So, we need more of those, and we actually need to scale that, across these companies. And I just really love the fact that we've got Women at Tech, because that is a perfect vehicle for us to accelerate these things. Thank you, Annie.
Maria?
I agree with everything that's been said. I think, so I come from a recruiting background, so I'm going to go very tactical on this. But so I think I often have to remember that we are at the end of like a long pipeline, a social pipeline, that from the moment a girl enters society, their expectations, I have a 13-year-old son, he changed when he went to primary school. Suddenly he understood gender roles, he liked cars, he liked trucks. I was talking to a friend over the weekend whose 5-year-old couldn't believe that a girl was the best football player on the football team. Where did he get that idea? Don't think it was from his parents. They're my friends. They're good people. But by the time people start coming into the workforce, whether that's men or women, they've been through a system that has told them they're probably going one way or the other, statistically, right? And the expectations. And so if I think about what each of us can do, and what organisations can do as well, it is reaching out into the community, as you were saying, right? It is representing. You don't have to be senior to inspire a 5-year-old. You don't have to be senior to inspire an 18-year-old. The fact that you're in a tech organisation, whether in a tech role or not, is possibly something they haven't considered. And then I think the other thing, from an organisational perspective, is that across the industry, we see women leaving tech, and particularly technical roles, more often than not, because they either perceive or they have felt directly that that isn't sustainable for whatever's going on in their lives, whether that's caring responsibilities or illness or just wanting work-life balance. Having a great manager, having an organisation that understands work-life balance and is committed to that, I think is incredibly, incredibly important, and where people feel that it's kind of sustainable for their mental health. And particularly because of society, women tend to take on more caring responsibility, doubly true for those. So I kind of think of it as a spectrum, right? It took us a long time to get here. It's going to take us a while to get back, but we have to be really realistic about what the issues are along that pipeline, or that like spectrum of a woman's life and how that relates to tech.
So, I mean, Openreach is predominantly a frontline engineering business. Of like the 33,000 colleagues we have, the vast majority of those are engineers. And so, the numbers you're talking about, they're much worse, quite frankly, for Openreach. And that's partly because, as others have talked about on the panel, we started on the D&I journey with a, frankly, very homogenous base and with a very large denominator. It's quite hard to shift the dial on that, and we've worked very hard to do it. But when we sort of started the sort of transformational broadband upgrade journey for the UK, which we are doing at Openreach, and we started about sort of 5 to 6 years ago, we had the opportunity to recruit quite large numbers of people into the organisation. So we've hired over 10,000 apprentices over the last 5 years, and had a very clear focus on how do we increase the diversity using this opportunity. When we started that process, we had 690 female engineers in Openreach out of a population of 33,000. We set some quite ambitious targets, so we aim to get 20% of those frontline apprentice hires into the business being female. We pretty much hit that. We were on about 17% last year. But even so, while fantastic, we're currently at 1,600 female frontline engineers. That is great, but you don't have to be a maths genius to spot the problem, which is when you've got 33,000 people, even if we've done really well in getting people through the business, you still not really move the dial. So actually, overall in Openreach, we're just under 11% women. That's lower as a proportion at the engineering base. Where we are making progress, though, is First, you're trying to change those attitudes around engineering as a career. I'll talk a little bit about that when we come to some of the later questions and what we did to try and encourage people coming in. So I completely agree. There's this need for a societal shift from a very young age in girls feeling that these kind of careers are for them and not being stereotyped. But we are doing better across other populations in Openreach. So actually, in our management populations, we are closer to those kind of mid-high 20% that you're talking about. For the first time ever last year, we had 50-50 recruitment into our senior management, which is great. We've had 50-50 recruitment into our grad population for ages. So there are pockets, but you know, to Harmeen's point, we've not made enough progress, and it is going to take time, especially when you're trying to shift a very big base, which was in a very undiverse place.
Yes, exactly.
I'm just saying, I just want to build on that, because if you look at Amazon, you know, we have an incredibly large base of employees along a wide variety of teams, you know, whether it's from marketing to logistics to engineering to sales, what have you not. So, and also across a variety of industries. So I would say it's a very, representation of a broad, diverse mix. And what we see there, which is on the one hand very encouraging, and I look back to when I started off, which is again many, many moons ago in Samsung, where I was the only one. But if I now look across our organization and I look at the more junior levels, actually there's a reasonably good split between men and women, which is very encouraging to see. I think where we see it fall off is obviously it's that first step towards manager, and I think that's where we need to get them in. So I think it's very much, get more women, first and foremost, to start in those organizations, but it's great to see them start, and then it's really disappointing to see them fall off that cliff at that first stop. And I think the other point that's so incredibly concerning is then what the few that did make it through, we see also a bigger drop-off there, as there are other things that come in the way, whether it's children, whether it's menopause, there's a lot of things that happen as a woman progresses throughout her career where they're just, and the ones that do make it through also fall out. So I think it's, as organizations, really understanding and going deep in terms of looking at that whole journey, setting very clear targets, like at every stage of that journey, what does good look like and how far off are we and what can we do to bridge those gaps? And I've seen a lot of great initiatives, which is very encouraging to see across all of these organizations. But again, much more needs to be done.
Thank you. I think if I was to summarize that, there is a lot of work to do. We have made progress. There is an element of understanding the challenges that women face throughout their lives, even before they get to career stage, that perhaps companies need to think wider about in terms of the initiatives that impact societally, and then what you can do within your organizations and actually focusing on sustaining that through the long term, because there's a lot of short-termism that exists within a lot of our companies, and I understand why, but something like this needs dedicated resources and dedication over time. I'd like to ask a more personal question. So could you tell us about a time someone invested in you and how it had a significant impact on your professional or personal progress? And Eileen, I'd like to ask you first.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's interesting when I, look back at my career and sort of, I was reflecting, what were those points, where I felt, my career accelerated. It really boils down to this one pivotal, manager I had, who once told me, let's think about your career as almost like platform building, right? Like, when the base is small enough, you can't really hold up much. And sort of, when you want to grow up, when you want to grow your career, you sort of, you really want a strong base. It would, when a really exciting opportunity or, a really exciting role comes, it would be so disappointing to actually not be ready for it, right? So sort of, took that, embraced that philosophy, sort of, guided me through. And, as a woman, you typically sort of want to feel 100% confident or 100% competent for a role you sort of want to go for. And I'm just like, what the heck, right? I'm just going to raise my hand for things, I sort of, I sort of, know this, piece of work, and I want to raise my hand and I want to be in a room where I'm the person who knows the least, right? And sort of, that kind of learning, agility, and that mindset sort of guided me through my career. And, so I threw myself into completely different roles, expose myself to different functions, move from one region to another. I sort of, I felt, I sort of knew APAC, let me go to Europe. There you go. Quite diverse range of, different kinds of business models. And so, that allowed me to sort of just, broaden my base, broaden my skill sets, my network, my community. So, each and every bit of my career actually, was quite helpful in sort of opening up opportunities. But also, just personally, it has boosted my confidence and really just, kind of sharpened this learning agility that I quite enjoy now, throwing myself into completely something new. And so just on the professional side, that's really just been pivotal for me. And on the personal side, and I probably speak for a very rare few, I had my daughter when I was very young, early 20s. So I sort of, first 10 years of my career, I was juggling motherhood and career. So, like through the years, so sort of juggled that together. 10 years ago, like I got this offer to move to London, and I was discussing this with my husband. I'm like, oh, like London, how do we do this? We're both working. How do we do childcare? It's expensive. And it was that night, my husband's just like, look, you know what? I'm gonna take a step back. Our kids and I are just gonna support you for this. We'll do this, we'll take the leap. And that's been such a core part of where I am and who I am today. And probably, like I super admire people, couples who both work and really just make it work. But this has just been so transformational for me. That doesn't free me up from care duties though. But, it's just been, these two things have really just been, such a core part of my journey. Thank you. Yeah.
Julie, did you have something to add?
Yes, so I've been at Cisco, as I said, a really long time, 16 years, and there's a kind of phrase in Cisco, one Cisco, many careers, if you've been there for a period of time, and that's definitely true for me. And I think, if I think about those leaders that have made a difference in my journey, they've all exemplified that servant-type leadership. What can I do for you to help you grow in your career? And there's been a couple of amazing leaders that I've had in particular that have, given me the confidence to say, treat your career like you do at work, like you manage a project. Make sure you're making the time for your own development. Make sure that you're pushing your leaders and future leaders to have those career conversations with you. And one in particular said, unless you feel a little bit scared or that you don't really know what you're doing, like that's when you're growing, right? So put yourselves in those situations more and more. And, just to comment on what you said, that helps build your confidence. And it makes you kind of go for roles where you think, well, I kind of know 50% of it. I think I can learn the rest, or those skills are transferable. So that's been, really pivotal for me in my journey. And then I think the other point is, I've got an amazing husband and family support system, and they actually really enable me to have the career that I have as well, and have given me the confidence. And again, similar to your situation, my husband has, at times said, this is your time, you kind of go for it. I'm going to take on, the role with looking after childcare. So, I almost call it my board of directors, where I've got my folks in work, my leadership team that support me, I've got my sponsors, my mentors, and then I've kind of got my family network. So really think about your whole circle that can help support your development, in your careers.
That's great advice. Does anybody have anything to add?
I just want to build on that support network. So I think while it's great that, in instances it works and somebody decides to, basically take a step back, wouldn't it be great if that wouldn't be needed? Wouldn't it be great if we would just have a way to just both be able to go for it, have a great career, while at the same time having a really good work-life balance? My other half has his own company and he works really, really hard. I work really, really hard. And we make it work. It's not great, and obviously it's very stressful at times. But I do think that there are ways how you can make that work. But it just requires a lot of effort, and I think there's still opportunity for us to, rather than having the one person having to take a step back, actually we both are able to grow careers and be successful and develop and feel okay about that.
Yeah. I think that sounds wonderful. It's amazing. But I agree. So I had my son when I was 22, and I think there was a point where I was like, right, am I putting my foot on the pedal or am I taking it off the pedal? Like, what are my options here? And I put it on the pedal, and his dad and I aren't together anymore, but we went 50-50, and it was a genuine 50-50 of like, your career is no more valuable than mine, and my career is no more valuable than yours. And in all honesty, we were in our early 20s, neither career was particularly valuable at that point in time. But it was that sense that we both had a right to a career, right? And that if a meeting came up on either side, but it is an effort, it's a constant process, and it still is, of negotiation and management and, you know, what have we got on and what's best for Theo at this point in time. And it's been 13 years of like constant chat every day. But it's worth it because we're now both where we want to be in our careers. And at some point, one or the other of us may take a step back, but I think it's, there's a support network, there's also childcare, right? There's also great management, being able to work from home, being able to go to sports day because you're allowed to take a couple of hours out and no one's going to freak out, right? There's things that organisations can do to really support that need from families, and a lot of that is just being like, broadly flexible about the fact that stuff happens outside work, and that you don't have to work in a sort of incredibly rigid structure and environment. One of the things I love about Meta is that I can do that, and it's understood because I will get my work done, and that's respected.
I think there will be a lot of people who resonate with that last point, right? We are in these amazing organizations, super talented people. When you hire super talented, motivated people, you expect them to work out the best way to manage their lives. And I think there's definitely something which leaders can think about and take away on that point. So thank you, everyone. So next, I'd like to come to you, Deepika. So how are our respective organisations really investing in women to accelerate professional progress? For BT itself, like if you look at our leadership and where women are sitting, if you look at the representation in leadership, it's an amazing nuance, right? For me, my boss and my boss's boss is also a woman. So I've never had that. And it's so amazing. The representation just matters. Just people like me, someone who speaks like me, someone sometimes looks like me, or someone who says things like me, standing out there in leadership is a very different nuance for me to begin with. And then coming from there, I think Vicky's spoken about the Gen network that's been set up by Harmeen. It's a very different champion-led nuance. It is for the woman, by the woman. What are the problems that we need to take care of, and how do we have those conversations, which are pertinent to maybe a certain part of the organization, certain location, and all of that. So they're doing incredible amount of work there. And then also from a perspective of supporting senior leaders, and Vicky also spoke about that, where we talk about, we get our MDs and directors together, because after, as we said, it's at a certain level that the drop-off happens. And it happens because it takes a village to get there. It is not easy what we do. It's not easy how much we balance. We've heard from all the women on the panel today, balancing is a craft, and we're all doing this across the organization as well. To be able to have those conversations with your peers, to be able to say it's okay not to be okay, it's okay to have that support, it's okay to discuss those deep meaning conversations, it's amazing, and that's been set up at BT as well. And if you look at digital at BT and the tech teams at BT as well, we are very intentional. That diversity that you see in the organization and the diversity of thought and women and other diversity as we have on the table as well is very different, and that has been kicked off already, and we all absolutely look for the best talent. We, with intention, go and see how we can bring talent on board with diversity, and how do you support them, right? As you said, Mitali, when you bring a talent on board, how do you support them? What are their needs? What do they need? What is that extra delta that you need to be able to invest in? And we are intentionally going towards that, So there is a lot that is happening already, but it's a lot that also needs to happen. So, for our team at BT, you have the Gen Network, become your champions, come and tell us what to do. If you don't hear from you, we won't know everything that we have to do. You have Harmeen, you have Vicky, you have all of us, so please come to us. And for Women in Tech as well, we are here. So let us know what we can do. Thank you. Catherine, would you like to add?
Well, so first, I mean, Maria mentioned this. First, you've got to get them into the business or into the industry in the first place. And, you know, I talked a bit about the challenge that we faced, in particular, when we sort of started our sort of scale build. We actually ran sort of 2 separate campaigns to try and attract women into the business. And obviously, this is challenging because you're trying to reverse, you know, hundreds of years, effectively, of stereotypes about what women and girls think they should be. A lot of it, as you say, starts very early from primary school with people telling girls that they can't do an engineering job, or actually even in their heads, them thinking that an engineering job is not for them, or it's too, you know, the tasks are sort of too male-focused. So one of the pieces of work we did was something called In Plain Sight, which we did with Exeter University and also with some linguistic experts. And we actually looked at our job adverts. And it was really interesting. Our job adverts, I mean, you kind of read them, they described the job, but they were absolutely putting women off from wanting to apply for these jobs. And really interestingly, the word engineer itself, while it has a huge cachet, I think, and I think for us is still really important, we want people to feel that they're engineers, for a number of women who didn't know the industry or didn't know the company very well, just that word was very off-putting. And there was other stuff we were describing in the job spec, which again, just didn't quite work when we were trying to get women into the business. So we changed the wording in the job spec, talk more about customers. I mean, fundamentally what we are doing is serving customers, and people who have customer service backgrounds do absolutely fantastically in OpenReach. People from armed forces backgrounds also do fantastically in OpenReach. And we found we had 300% more applications from women when we changed the wording of the job ad. You know, just something really, really simple. And that, as a result, meant we hired 500 more female engineers in that year. We then wanted to showcase to women and a more diverse population that you can have a career in OpenReach and, you know, be a little bit challenging. So we did a campaign called Watch Me, a social media campaign, and it was very deliberately a bit like, you know, watch me, you think I can't do this, but I'm having a fantastic time here and I've got great career opportunities. And so we basically showcased what it was like to be an engineer in OpenReach. And again, that was incredibly successful. We had over 40,000 visits to the job site. We had 14,000 people, I think, express interest in a role. So again, just trying to bring to life the role and getting people in as the first step. Now, obviously, once they're in, you've got to try and break down the barriers. And I think, you know, that there are multiple things you can do there. I mean, firstly, there's just very practical steps. So you take engineering roles, uniform and kit. You know, at the start, when we started bringing large numbers of women in, we didn't have the right size or shape of clothing. You know, we didn't have small enough jackets. You know, everyone was in these sort of huge, massive sort of yellow jackets, all that didn't zip up so it doesn't go over your hips. And, you know, people have to climb poles, and the harnesses are frankly not that comfortable anyway, but they're designed for men. So there's a sort of whole piece around once you're in the job, you know, have you got the basic tools and kit to do the job? I think the cultural piece is obviously huge. So starting from where we started, we've been on a huge journey to try and shift the culture. I agree, the networks, and not just our Gen network, but all the networks have done an incredible job in sort of building a very different and more inclusive culture in OpenReach. We've also committed really hard to sort of just basic training and rolling out training. And then ultimately, in the end, it's how do you ensure that you can progress people through the organisation, so it's promotions, diverse shortlists. But it's multifaceted, I think, in terms of everything we need to do lean in. As you say, it doesn't just happen, you need to invest in it.
And I started as a BT grad in OpenReach, so I was there for 2 years, right? And it's the commitment and the change that has happened, what you're describing, is monumental, because OpenReach, when you come in culturally, is such a strong culture, and you have to make those commitments, but not just commit, deliver on them to drive and change that culture. And the reason why I'm resonating with what you're saying is because it's so great to hear how far OpenReach has come on all of these points. And I was part of the Gen when we were trying to get engineering clothing for women, because it didn't even exist, which is sounds so silly, but that is such a barrier to entry. And so it's just thinking, you know, in terms of when you make a commitment from your organisation, follow it through, and that growth and retaining will come off the back of that. Maria, did you want to add anything on this point?
Yes. I feel like I'm about to mangle this. I 100% agree with everything that you were saying, right? And when you were talking about the harnesses and the outfits, it just made me think about structures, right? The structures and the systems and the processes, because that's like effectively what organisations are built on, right? And Meta's no different. And the world is built for a certain type of person. I think we can all imagine that person in our head. The Western world, right? The society that we're in, and that most organisations operate in. And so I think as an organisation, what you're trying to fundamentally do is kind of recreate a structure that's more equitable. And when you build for underrepresented people, right, or marginalised people, you're making life better for everyone, right? It's not elevating one person over another, but you are making life equitable for everyone. If I think about, and particularly at Meta, right, what's really worked for me, and you think about how people thrive, like I thrive in a space where I feel psychologically safe, right? And that's where I do my best work. I feel psychologically safe when I'm confident that my manager is a good manager and is working for me. One of the things I love about Meta is that there's a really high expectation on managers to manage in an inclusive and proactive and a development-focused way. Certainly my management capability has been like forced upwards through being there. I think that's really important, do that inclusively. I thrive best in an environment, and I think this is part of the piece where the environment suits me, right? Can I work from home, in the office? And I think there what we have to also remember is that women aren't just women. Women are also black women. Women are disabled women. Women are neurodiverse women. And the same for men as well, right? So and they are parents and they're carers and they are everything, where there's space for all aspects of your personality. I have ADHD, I'm scatty. My immediate team sometimes see me work from bed because I have to lock myself in the room, draw the curtains, and not go outside, otherwise I get too distracted by everything else. And that is okay. Maybe not in a meeting with VPs, but it's okay on a, So it's a space where it's okay to be you. I agree about ERGs. I think we bang on about them a lot, but I think an ERG or a network in its best form is a community outside of your immediate team. It is a support. When I was getting diagnosed with ADHD at Meta, there's an amazing guy who is a big figure in the neurodiversity space, and as a neurodiverse woman, he spent like a couple of hours with me, like talking me through, talking me down, and that's the power of community. So I think if anyone's in a space where they're like, oh, I'm not quite connected with a network, or I'm not sure where my space is, honestly, reaching out, as terrifying it is, and saying, actually, I need help. It took me about 3 days to be like, hello, I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm crying all the time, and it was the best thing I ever did. That's a bit of a garbled message, but yeah.
It makes complete sense. Thank you. We've talked a lot about all the great things we're doing, but we had the stats at the start. What isn't working and why? Ines?
Yeah. I think it's a little bit what I said earlier. I think we've seen a lot of the progress on the lower levels. What isn't working is that, and we all are very aware here, is that broken rung. So when we see women not being able to make that jump into the managerial positions, and some of so to throw in some more stats, I think the research showed that for every 100 men promoted, 89% of women get promoted. I think it's 82% make it to a managerial position. And the reason why I think that is the biggest piece that isn't working, because it just puts us in a perpetual cycle, right? Because if they are not getting promoted at the same time, there is less women at the top to make sure they get promoted. So that whole support system, and I think all of us here probably mentor and coach and are sponsors of women to make sure they progress up on the ladder. But there's just not enough of us getting on that ladder, and that will be a really difficult piece to break. And I think the only way how we can break that is to enlist allies. I think so far, and I very often say, whenever we have an event, I feel like I'm preaching to the converted because we're all sitting in a room, we all believe this is important, we all put a lot of effort into it, great. The problem is, the higher you get, there's less of us. So to scale and to have a bigger impact, we really need allies to come in. And allies, it's difficult. Like, what does that even mean, being an ally? What do you can say, but what do you actually physically do differently? And I think this is where, again, thank you for calling out at the start, the allies in the room. I think it's so incredibly important that we communicate clearly what it is to be an ally, what can you do, and how important it is. We had a panel discussion yesterday in the Amazon offices about being an ally, and what does that mean? And we had, one of our key exec sponsors was there as well. What he does, and he was very open, he said, I didn't know what it meant. Like, I was asked to speak on a panel about diversity, and it was a couple of years ago for him, and he said, I was sitting there and I frankly didn't have anything to say for myself. And that was a moment where he realized, actually, I should probably just, educate myself, read up. What is microaggressions? How do I identify them? How can I call them out? How do I make sure that when I'm in a meeting, I ask other women to speak up and I see they're not, they're being taken over? Women are twice as likely to be interrupted in a meeting as men. Women are 1.5 times more likely to get their work that they proudly, achieved being taken credit for by somebody else. Like, how do you as an ally call out that type of behavior? And I think that's how we make way more progress much faster.
Agreed. Deepika, did you want to?
Absolutely. I think, as we said, support. I think the first step is getting the women through the door, to be able to understand that we hire with intention. We absolutely make it look. It absolutely open the doors to say that you should come in. We welcome you. We want to be able to have you. But I think the entire stuff then starts after they walk through the door. It is always around, what provisions are you providing, so that if they have a certain, and we've always said, it is not just about, where they're coming from. The knowledge is there, the intention is there, they're signing up for the job. Women work very hard to be able to get there. But if there is a situation where they need extra support, if there is a situation that we need to hear more, if there is a situation that we need to, for anyone, right, for neurodiverse people, for anyone who needs any amount of support, are we supporting them? Are we showing that intention? Are we giving that extra little that we need to be able to make that work? And I am myself a product of a lot of mentorship. It took a lot to get here. It wasn't the easiest ride. It has never been an easier ride. Still, even today, I take a lot of help from my allies, from my teams, from my mentors, from my peers, and I ask for help. I stand there very vulnerably to say, I've got a situation. This is not what I'm able to do. This is not where I'm not doing this very well. Can someone help me with this? And putting yourself out there is very important. When someone is putting themselves out there, we need to be able to listen to that as well. We as a team need to be able to come around and say, what are we not listening to? What are we not supporting? Right? So there's a lot of that environment creation, that psychological safety creation, the creation of different diverse voices, everything that needs to come together. How do we support that? If we unlock that, as leaders, if we support that and we are being vulnerable there as well, I think we can start having at least a conversation to be able to get women with leadership roles.
I think your point makes it just sound so human. We just need to understand each other better. We need to talk to each other. We need to try and, understand individual needs and build that team and build that board that we mentioned earlier of support. Back on that topic, on what isn't working though, why hasn't more been done to invest in women? What are the blockers in businesses for doing more? And Maria, since you're in this area, I might come to you first.
I'm going to go broad, then I'm going to go specific. I think, and it's a similar vibe. I think. I've always worked in really commercial businesses, right, in media and tech. And commercial businesses, we work on a 12-month basis, and we like results, right? So we put a plan in place, we execute the plan, we get a result. Tick, done. Move on to the next thing. Diversity doesn't work like that. It's taken thousands of years of oppression to get us to this space, and it's going to take a long time and consistent effort. It's going to be backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards. It's a human space. People are going to join, they're going to leave. And I think that there is, and I don't think this is the case at Meta, and I'm very happy about that, of maybe from a leadership perspective, and then also from underrepresented people, women in the organisation, questioning, is this working? Are we... we put the sponsorship program in place. Why don't we have loads of female directors, right? Because with most of the other things that we do, right, we build the subsea cable, we launch the product, and then users and customers and revenue, and this is the one thing that we're struggling with, because it's such a complex space. So I think the reason that some organisations don't do as much as they could is because actually it's simpler to just do something performative, right? If I think back around the Me Too movement, or more recently George Floyd, every single organisation had a black square. We're going to eradicate racism in this organisation. Ben & Jerry's did a podcast about eradicating racism. I don't understand the connection, but it's no longer around, I don't believe. Right, and then you look now, we're in 2024, and the situation broadly hasn't changed. It was a global situation. So there's a piece around performative allyship and like, well, we've done a thing and everything else seems really hard. The silver bullet didn't work. It's too tough to make systemic change, right? If we're going in, if we're looking at performance reviews, if we're looking at manager training, if we're looking at, there's a great thing that Meta does, which I think is absolutely wonderful, which is before kind of the performance review process, there's training, right? There's one, which is the one I'm thinking of at the moment, because I think it's probably, it's really cool, which is writing your performance review if you have English as a second language, which isn't necessarily about women, but it's addressing an imbalance that is there, but you have to do that at the start of the recruiting process. Job descriptions, oh my God, yes. Through to, you know, accessibility, accommodations, and that's gonna impact women with disabilities. And then you've got new hire orientation, and it is literally at every single stage of somebody's career over and over and over. So there's one thing that I could say that I think is stopping people doing this. It's one, understanding the complexity, and two, stamina.
Yes.
Yeah.
Agreed. So how can the industry work together to make a difference for female talent in the workplace? I'd like to go to you, Eileen.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, you know, we can't all do it alone, and we really do need to partner with different kinds of organizations and, you know, across our companies. And, you know, like I think there was a really great earlier point about just get them in the door. It really is a big problem for us. And, you know, just to address that, we actually built a dedicated EMEA DEI recruiting team, really with the remit of, you know, we do need to increase representation of women and underrepresented groups. And what we've done here is, number one, we've reviewed all the job postings. It is transformational the way, you know, sometimes a job posting can actually really put women off. And then number two, they work with student women groups and universities, really to be able to build that kind of authentic relationship, boost their confidence that yes, you know, this tech role, this engineering role is for you. You should go for it, and, you know, here are resources to actually prep you for it. And, you know, and really, you know, this helps us really diversify that future talent pipeline, because we do need to get them in. So, you know, that's, you know, we invest very heavily in that early career stage. On progression and retention, we partner a lot with our Google partners as well, and scaling a lot of the programs and initiatives that we really see working. You know, some of you may have joined us for Tell Your Story. Tell Your Story is this Google initiative that really helps empower women to unlock their personal story and be able to, you know, really grow through the leadership pipeline through impactful storytelling. So really wonderful workshop. We run about 25 workshops every single quarter, and we've scaled it across many of our women at tech partners as well, with Amazon, with NatWest, with Colt. And really, you know, like the, you know, women are just really, you know, just so supportive of just getting the support to be able to tell their story and also just build advocacy and sponsorship for their career goals. And, you know, like, lastly, of course, I mean, you know, this Women at Tech, I just wanted to give a shout out to our Women at Tech group, really, to those of you who don't know, you know, like this, you know, passionate set of women came together, you know, with the main, you know, goal of, you know, we do need to improve women's representation and progression as well, you know, and we can definitely collaborate across our companies. So, you know, really just big shout out, you know, they have put out, you know, like first ever cross-company mentoring program. This is always oversubscribed. Watch out for the next one once that comes out. They have come out with, you know, like a first in industry gender gap index report. This is so tough, but we need to get this right. There is not a lot of data on a UK level, and this is really, you know, such a critical starting point for us. And we're hoping to engage, you know, our leaders and executives in a roundtable to really, you know, all align on an action plan to drive change here in this space. And lastly, of course, you know, you're in this event, an amazing lineup of events. You know, we're able to bring in community across our companies, and we need more of this. And this is powered by volunteerism. So really just shout out, you know, Mitali included here, who co-founded that. But there is a lot of work ahead of us. But, you know, it definitely, you know, feels very exciting when we all work together.
Thank you. And I've got the time check, so I'm gonna be direct with the next one. So, Catherine, what can we as individuals attending, listening today, and our allies joining us do to drive investment in women and accelerating progress? And how can we shift the culture?
Yeah.
I know we've discussed a lot, but do you have any final thoughts?
There's a sort of slight personal bugbear of mine, which is at events like this, we talk a lot about women. I mean, I know that sounds a bit crazy, and I know there's centuries of oppression that we need to address and get through, but actually that isn't the bigger picture. And if I think about the thing that would help me most in my career, it's actually, it's been mentioned in the panel before, it's about how broader society can support me to do my job, and in particular I'm thinking about care and caring responsibilities. And you know, there are other people involved in caring, and by that I'm obviously talking about men. And this is not a criticism of the fantastic fathers and others out there who have caring responsibilities. I mean, there's some great examples on the panel of husbands and fathers who are doing a great job here. I think actually culture has shifted in terms of that sort of feeling responsible if you're a dad for that kind of role, but I do not feel culture and businesses have shifted in legitimising fathers taking on that kind of caring role in the workplace, which frankly then frees me up to do my job. So, you know, the thing that I really want, and I really want as individuals, but also as companies, is to legitimise men to take a frontline role in care and childcare. You know, what I want is the school, either the nurse or the teacher, or quite frankly my children, to when they have an issue, call my husband first and not immediately call me. My favourite one ever was I was not even in the country, and my son had told the nurse I wasn't in the country, and she still phoned me first to see if I could come and get him from school. So there is this big thing for me around the thing that allows me to do my job and work and lean in is because I've got this kind of, you know, help and societal help that people feel that men are allowed to go and do this. And I do worry as well a little bit that we have some fantastic female role models out there and some very high profile female role models, but they're in inverse 1950s relationship. You know, the discussion we've had with people taking a step back, I agree in this. You know, we kind of need to be in a space where we're not having to all take a step back. And the vast majority of parents are working. So over 50% of partners and parents in the UK both work. In America, that goes up to 65%. So this is the norm. So we have to find a way of supporting both partners in doing roles. And I think fundamentally that is a bit of a societal shift, which means that I'm not going to mention the company my husband works in, but a financial services company allows him to leave and go and potentially the kids up if there's an emergency, rather than always having to be me on the front line.
100%, you know. Things are getting more expensive. We all need to work more, and you know, it's just where we are now. And I mean, I'll add a personal note, and then I know we've got lots of questions. You know, me and my partner, we want to be a dual career couple. We both have big jobs. We both have big dreams. I don't like the idea that when I get married and so on, I'm worried. I'm genuinely worried, and my mission is to make sure that the next generation doesn't have to have, can I have this or that, and we can find a way to make it all work. All right, so I think I'm going to move over to questions. I see a lot of questions coming in today. So Charlotte in Leeds has asked, what are the key things that allies need to do to ensure feminism is truly intersectional and representing all women? I'd like to go first.
I love that. We have a really great example of, you know, like, I think, you know, there's an earlier point of, you know, we're not just, you know, gender is not our only identity. You know, we have so much, you know, other roles, you know, other identities as well. And what we've done is, you know, we partnered with our Black Googler network. And we put together what is now an annual series called State of Black Women. And what we did was, you know, we brought together all our, you know, Black women employees and, you know, our leaders, including our CEO, so that these women can actually share their experiences, not just with each other, with the community, but also with their leaders. And that's become so successful. I think we're running the 4th year now. And that's really important, right? Like, we're not just women. We bring our own, you know, intersectional identities. And it's very important to sort of, you know, also build allies within these.
Exactly. Maria?
100%, 100% agree with that. And I think sometimes I'm not going to go into a rant about how flawed feminism is as a concept, but I think sometimes as organisations we don't help ourselves with how we structure our networks, right? There's Black at, and there's Women at, and there's whatever. One of the things we haven't met is we've got Black Women at, and we've got Black Women Leaders at, etc. And I think it is about opening up those conversations and guiding those conversations, because it can be really challenging, right, to be in an intersectional room, and it can feel like sometimes there's a kind of competition around like how underrepresented am I, and then people get a bit weird, right? And there's the same thing in the Black community with colorism, for example. I'm mixed race. It took me like a really long time to own my privilege of being mixed race and white skinned, because I was so focused on my own pain of like having had racism and being a Black woman. And once I did, it clicked, and I was like, oh, for God's sake, it's not a competition. This is a space where we all rise together if we can just put our egos aside and pull together. We are large communities together. We are over 50%, massively over 50% of any organisational population if we all come together across disability and LGBT and women and Black. We become a legion. I think that's really important. And then having those conversations, actually that question is literally, we're having an internal panel next week, which is that. And we're going really, really deep into that. We've had Black is not a monolith. That was a really important one and very educational for folks, because we talk about Black and we're in a global organisation of like 70,000 people. Black is not one thing, and it's the same with womanhood. Yeah. So I think, I mean, honestly, I would say in this case, it's probably a case of working with your DEI team to talk about that and kind of unpack some of the issues. In previous organisations I've worked in, they just jumped into it and there's a bun fight, right? And that's the last thing you want amongst your community. So,
Thank you. Next, we've got Sharmista in Bangalore. How do we enable local leadership to sponsor micro-programmes that are culturally aligned to promote better gender diversity in local leadership roles? It's a virtuous loop, but the escape velocity needs to be fueled through top-down strategy. Who'd like to take that?
I can start. So it's absolutely, I do understand and I do agree that sometimes when you have to get things moving, it really helps if you have a top-down strategy. If you have help, if you have champions who can, kick things off, it really, really helps. But it's also quite pertinent to understand how the situation is locally, what is needed. The data needs to be collected. We need leadership, we need women, we need teams to stand up and say, this is what's not working. This is what needs to work. So from Bangalore, we are ready to hear. So do let us know what is going on in a particular situation. Do let us know what programs or culturally aligned programs that would actually help in doing this. Sometimes it could be a lack of understanding, lack of knowledge in what is needed in that area, or sometimes it could be something that is blocking, and we wouldn't know naturally what the blockers are and what would really help. So having that knowledge would really empower us to, remove those barriers. Absolutely understood. It needs to be local. It needs to be pertinent. It needs to be absolutely what needs to happen in that area.
I just wanted to touch on that as well, actually. I think this is where some of the employee resource groups really come into play. Obviously, I'm the Women of Cisco UK and Ireland, and we have a ton of initiatives within that group that are focused on, what can we do in the UK and Ireland? And some of it is just around, diversity, allyship. So there's a lot that you can do locally, and if you have those communities, just really tap into those and then bring those problems to local leadership, because half the time they just might not be aware, and it's about bringing it to them.
Agreed. Anybody? Okay, next we have Elizabeth in Glasgow. I love the get them in the door philosophy to attract women and promote them. My question is, how do we break the stigma that comes with it, i.e. she got the job because she's a woman, or it's to tick a box?
I think we've all heard this one time or the other. We've all heard this.
No.
Yes, sure.
DI recruiting. There's a TikTok, can't remember who did it, but it was a phrase from a man who's like, she stole my job. Why do you assume it was your job? Right? Exactly. And I think this phrase comes from an assumption that it's automatically someone's job, right? And a woman took it. And that I have a real problem with, because I think there's a large undercurrent of misogyny there. I think from an organisational perspective, it's just being really clear about how you do DEI, right? How we do candidate attraction, our interview processes, and that being super transparent. So one of the things I do really like about Meta is that we have a very transparent interview process. Everyone goes through the same interview process. You can, interview notes are clear, they're audited. Like, we're very, very clear about what our processes are, and we're very, very clear that we are totally above board in terms of integrity, right? We're not looking to put bums in seats. The hiring bar is not lowered. What we're looking to do is expand the talent pool to attract people to the organisation, to eliminate bias in our systems, and that's about equity. That's not about prioritising someone because they're underrepresented. It's about creating a system where they can thrive, where they have the talent. And the expectation when you get in, I think, any organisation is that you have the talent to be there, and that should be the expectation. But I think clarity from organisations, because we're very good at talking about our goals, right? And then often we don't go into the granular detail because we don't want to share how the sausage is made and it's boring and blah, blah, blah. But I think more narrative around this is our approach, and it's about integrity, and it's about being compliant, and we're working with employment law, and we're making sure that we're doing this in the right way, because nobody wants someone to come into an organisation and suffer because we made a bad decision, right? For the wrong reasons. So I think that needs to be part of the narrative when we talk about having these goals and having these targets.
And also, once they're coming through the door, it's not like they have to still do the job. The women have to do the job. The KPIs are not changing. The job is still on their head. You know, just because a woman is in the job, nothing changes. It's still the same job. Anybody can do it. They still have to do the job. So this whole nuance about, you know, you're a diverse woman, you got this job, is a thing that I've heard so many times. And yet I say, I'm still doing the job. I'm still good at it. I'm still delivering. My KPIs are small, so where is the contention?
Yeah, I think it's just to build. I think it's very much, you touch upon the recruitment process. It's about having a really equitable, fair recruitment process, and everybody knows it is fair and equitable. So you're not going to get away. I happen to be a woman, happen to have breast. I got this job because of that, and you only speak to one person. You know, in Amazon, and I think we have a high bar, an incredibly high bar. Women and men make it through. And it's just because we have, you know, it's data driven. It's based on examples that individual has given, not because they seem to be a good fit. That's not how it works, right? It's incredibly mechanized. So everybody, to your point, we capture the feedback. If you feel that's the case, look at the feedback. There have been 5, 6 people involved in interviewing this process, this particular woman. She's got here because she's amazing and she's fantastic, and she had good examples that were data driven. And the man who happened to interview didn't have that. So it's not about, you know, the sex, it's about literally the delivery during that process.
100% agree. We should talk. The one thing that I would say, right, is because I think that is the right way, right, to go about it, which is to make sure that it is super transparent, it's equitable, etc. And I imagine you guys do the same thing. It's making sure also people are prepared for that, right? Because some people might have come from Amazon to Meta, from Google to Meta, and they understand that process, or they might have friends in the organisation, or they've just come from a culture where like this is expected. The kind of prep process, right, and making sure people have the adequate time and resources to prep. All people, right? And some people might go, now I know this, and some people might go, oh, good God, I did not know that was what I was walking into. So that kind of prep and that support through the process is super, super important to make sure that people are able to kind of thrive in that environment. And I think when those two things come together, we have much more assurance as an organisation that we're making good hiring decisions, and much more assurance as candidates that you are in a space for the right reasons.
Yes. Okay, we've got Faye in Manchester. There are still huge barriers for women returning to work after starting a family. The cost of childcare, flexibility. What are the panel's thoughts on this, and how do we address this?
I can start if you want. Look, I think this is super tricky. I mean, I don't think any of us are going to have perfect answers from individual experiences about how you do this. It is incredibly difficult. I think trying to balance any caring responsibilities and home life and work-life balance, in particular childcare, is really, really hard. I mean, the two things that do help equip someone for success, firstly, I mean, Maria sort of talked about the sort of structural support or barriers. ensuring you've got the right structures and processes just fundamentally in place are really important. So our new BT CEO sort of talked about introducing more flexible family leave and parental leave. I think things like that, just around the experience in leaving, is really, really important. We've done quite a bit in Openreach to look at maternity, especially as we now have more frontline female engineers. So we've tried to educate, in particular, people's managers about what you can and can't do, both before and then when you come back. And also we've tried to support people with keep in touch days. Again, it's sort of trying to give people the confidence of when they're coming back in that it's going to work for them, and the confidence that they can work for them. But the structural stuff can only go so far. I really think comes down to the sort of culture within the organisation, but also fundamentally your team and your manager. So where we need to get to is people to be able to have very open and honest conversations with managers who are also very engaged, understand and willing to be supportive and understand the different kind of needs that someone may have. And fundamentally that manager relationship is going to be the thing that means that you feel okay, that if you're a tiny bit late or you've got to leave because you have a childcare crisis, you can have that conversation with a manager. So it comes back to the piece I was talking about earlier, that there's so many pieces. Do the structural stuff, but it's got to be about that culture and that ability to have really open conversations.
Anybody else? No? Agreed. Okay, so final quick question for everyone to answer. In the name of celebrating women in this International Women's Day, from Roxana in Madrid, do you have a female role model? If so, who is she and how has she inspired you? We can start anywhere.
I can go.
Yep.
Mine's my mum, 100%. She has taught me about just resilience and reinventing yourself. She went through some really personal hardships when she was younger. She lost two children, and just to see her continually kind of rise, and she really just inspires me so much. So yeah, it's definitely my mum.
Mine too, my mom. Because she's a working woman, and she started working in the early 80s in India, and she was a chartered accountant, and she set up a business on her own. The amount of noise she had to face from women, from everyone, to say, you're not there for your children. Are your children going to raise themselves? How are you not cooking for them? All of that, and seeing her navigate that. And today I stand here, I don't take it easy, but I do not answer these questions anymore. If anyone ever asks me how I balance, I'm like, I balance, and I move on. Because I also learned to stand up for myself, to be able to say, this is my personal situation, this is what my childcare situation looks like, and this is what I'm going to do. Standing for myself, she taught me a lot. And also, she never told me there was another option. She never said you can't work. She never said you can't stand up for yourself. She never said, yes, my dad also supported that, but she absolutely stood there and said, this is the future, navigate it, and you have to stand up for yourself. There's no other options in this world. And I come from that, so whenever I look at something that is not, done that way, I do learn to stand for myself.
I love that.
Mine is not my mum. I feel bad now saying it. I hope she's not watching, so it's fine. I won't tell her later. Actually, mine is the second female manager I had when I was in the Foreign Office. I had a career pre-tech, which was in post-conflict and diplomacy. And she went on to become ambassador at the UN and then also America. But she was a really strong woman in what was, again, quite a sort of male-dominated organisation. And she taught me sort of two key things. Firstly, the power of shoes. Like I had no shoe game, absolutely, before I met her, and she believed very, very much in like a good pair of shoes can send you a long way. But the second thing is she was incredibly confident, and she embodied a lot of the characteristics which can sometimes be turned against women. That's sort of your bossy, or you're interrupting people and trying to dominate. And she just took no nonsense at all. And she also really, really backed all individuals, and in particular me, but she was willing to bring more junior people up and into very senior meetings and into very senior decisions. We actually sort of got the government to move on a couple of sort of quite serious issues at the time, which were me coming going, I really think this needs to be done and put on the agenda, and she totally backed me. So, you know, as a really sort of strong female woman who then achieved great things, she's my role model.
Eileen, sorry, have to be super quick.
Yeah, no, quick one. Carla Harris, not sure if you know her. Really amazing leader. Buy her books. Go on Amazon and buy her books. You know, she has this quote from her book. You got the role because you were the best person for it. Also answers the other questions. So, you know, really just don't underscore the power of mindset and a strong support network.
My mom, 76, still working in the corporate environment. She's awesome.
I love my mum, but not her. There's a woman called Naomi Gleit, who's one of our VPs at Meta. She's got a Medium website. If you want to know how to like run your, I'm going to say a swear word, no, I'm not, run your life like corporately. I've learned so much from her, and like what she's thought up and created is disseminated across Meta, but it's fundamentally changed how I work. I don't know her, but I just think her brain is awesome.
Amazing. Thank you all for making the time and celebrating with us on International Women's Day. I think that's the end of the panel.
Again, thank you so much to each and every one of you. Really appreciate your time. Thank you, Mitali, for hosting. Thank you, everybody, wherever you are around the world, for joining today. I know I feel incredibly inspired and empowered, and I'm sure many others too. And he doesn't know it yet, but my husband's going to really enjoy watching this back. Happy International Women's Day. Thank you.